Welcome back to the Nerdy Grail, and thank you everyone for 500 subscribers. Now that might not sound like a lot, but for me that is incredible because I didn't expect to reach this milestone anywhere near as quickly as I have, and so this is my 500 subscriber special. And I thought, considering that my very first video on the channel, back when I was calling myself The Doctor's Diary, was a ranking of every single Doctor, I thought for my 500 subscriber special I would go back and revisit that, as that was back on the 7th of August 2024, and we are now over a year on, and now Ncuti Gatwa has actually left our screens as the Doctor, and we are now in an era where potentially Billie Piper could be the next Doctor, but who knows? We have to wait for Christmas 2026 for that. But I thought in the meantime, as I've watched a lot more Doctor Who since, I've revisited a lot more older Doctors, my opinions have changed quite a lot from the very first video. So I thought it was time that potentially I do an updated version of that list. And like I said, considering that was the very first video I did on the channel, it made sense that that would be the video that I should go back and revisit for my 500 subscriber special. So, sit back, relax, as I go through my new ranking every single Doctor so far in Doctor Who history. So, this is my tier list ranking every mainline Doctor in Doctor Who, or the updated version in celebration of my 500 subscribers, which I've managed to obtain now on YouTube. Thank you again very much for that. I couldn't have got to this point without any of you, so this is a bit of a celebration, like I said, because this was the very first video I ever did on my channel. So I thought, since it's been over a year and now I've reached this milestone, it was time to redo the list because my opinions have also changed. So as you can see on the list, we've got all the Doctors from the first Doctor, played by William Hartnell, all the way to the 15th Doctor, played by Ncuti Gatwa. I have also included Jo Martin's Fugitive Doctor and John Hurt's War Doctor. However, I haven't included any other Doctors, so I haven't included like Richard E. Grant's Schalke Doctor. I just thought the core mainline Doctors that we see on our screens was enough for this particular list. And as you can notice, we've only got 4 categories. We've got the best, great, good, and meh, because I don't think that any Doctor is, really terrible or awful. They've all at least got something to give, and so that's why I didn't put a bad category. The worst category is meh. So these are Doctors that, had potential, but it was never truly realised. They had a few more flaws than positives, but they weren't horrendous. And then the best, these are the Doctors that had great arcs, had great relationships and chemistry with companions, good relationships with their villains, and truly grew as characters. And also, there'll be a little bit of personal favourite from me anyway as well, here and there. But without any further ado, let's jump straight into this, starting with the first Doctor, played by William Hartnell. And also we had other interpretations from Richard Hurndall and David Bradley. Now, for me, William Hartnell, I think, is actually a great Doctor. He's the Doctor that started it all. And he goes through a terrific arc because at the start of his era, he is very alien. He is very cynical. He's cruel at times, to be honest. And, given the time period as well, he is a bit sexist and racist and this, that and the other, but he does grow an awful lot, and you notice the dramatic change even from when he loses Susan in season 2. His relationship with Ian and Barbara, who were there from the beginning, has grown dramatically. He's a lot more trusting of his companions. He works better as a team. He becomes that grandfatherly figure that Susan constantly refers to him as, and by the time you get to the 10th planet at the end, he's a completely different character. And he works with lots of different people. You even get like a unit prototype story in my personal favourite William Hartnell story, The War Machines. You know, and you could see him actually working together with people rather than thinking that he is the best and everyone just needs to listen to him. He does have a few rocky relationships with companions, such as Stephen Taylor, but I think overall he does a pretty good job, and he is a good Doctor. Originally, I would have put him probably more in good, but because of his arc, and recently with the release of like the Savages and stuff, and rewatching some of his stories, I think William Hartnell is actually a fantastic and great Doctor. Patrick Troughton, I think for me, Patrick Troughton is good. Not quite as good as William Hartnell, and I know some people might say the complete opposite, and that's perfectly fine. Like I said, Patrick Troughton is a solid Doctor as well as William Hartnell. You know, he had a tough job being the first Doctor or first actor to take over the role, and so people had to try and adjust to the change, and he is definitely a lot different. He's a lot more goofy, he's a bit of a clown, you know. He runs around a lot more than William Hartnell because he's a little bit younger, you know. His relationship with his companions is fantastic, mind. Like, obviously, Jamie McCrimmon and Victoria, Zoe, you know, he's got some great companions and great chemistry, some fantastic stories. He does grow slightly, but I do feel like the Patrick Troughton you see in The Power of the Doctor to the Patrick Troughton that you see in the War Games, they're not too dissimilar. There is some changes to the character. He does become a little bit more darker, a little bit more sinister. Not sinister, but a little bit more serious, I should say, actually. Especially when he comes to the realization that his travels could be put to the end when the Time Lords catch up with him. But I must admit, he is a fun Doctor. He's a funny Doctor. You know, he's got, you know, the clever nature on a dime that he can switch to, but he's also got that goofy persona. But I think he is overall a fairly good Doctor. Jon Pertwee, for me, I think he is a great Doctor up there as well. He could teeter into the best. Jon Pertwee, you know, he was the Doctor that was stranded on Earth. There was a complete change. The first Doctor or actor, you know, in the 70s now, and everything changed to colour. He was stranded on Earth, so he had to work with the Brigadier. Earthbound stories. He was the scientific advisor for UNIT. You know, his relationship with his companions were... Well, him and Liz, I don't think really worked the best, but he had a fantastic relationship with Jo Grant, one of the strongest in Doctor Who history, and his relationship with Sarah Jane Smith was terrific, and obviously his relationship with Benton and the Brigadier and Yates was fantastic. You know, him and Roger Delgado, the Doctor and the Master duo was amazing every episode that they were in. I loved his more... he was a lot more active. He was a bit more like James Bond. You know, he had lots of fast cars and high-tech gadgets, and he was fighting, everybody. You know, he was a lot more of an active Doctor, and I thought that was a bit of a nice change. He's also, you know, still got the grandfatherly instincts. You know, he's very caring towards people, but he also can be very snarky, very quippy. He's got some fantastic one-liners as well. I love Jon Pertwee, and he's got a solid era. There's very few Jon Pertwee stories that I think are weak. To be honest, there's a couple, maybe like Colony in Space, The Mutants, you know, just to name a few. There are a couple that I'm not really too keen on, but he's got some absolute bangers like The Time Warrior, Spear from Space, Inferno, you know, just to name a few, The Three Doctors. So he works really well with his previous incarnations as well. Him and the Second Doctor have a hilarious relationship. Yeah, I really, really enjoy the Third Doctor. He is fantastic. Anyone who knows me, this might be a little bit of personal bias, but anyone who knows me knows that the Fourth Doctor is my favourite Doctor of all time. Not only was he the Doctor that started off Doctor Who for me, my very first ever Doctor Who story was The Hand of Fear, so I've got a bit of a soft spot there. But he's helped me through some dark times in my life. He's a hilarious Doctor. He's the longest running Doctor still to this date. He's got some absolutely fantastic stories like Ark in Space, Genesis of the Daleks, Brain of Morbius, The Seeds of Doom, City of Death, you know, Horror Fang Rock, Talons of Weng-Chiang. You know, the list can go on. He's got a few rocky patches, such as I'm Not Huge on the Key to Time and Underworld and stories like that. He's had a plethora of companions. Him and Sarah are fantastic. Him, Sarah, and Harry, my favourite TARDIS team in almost Doctor Who history. You know, he's had Time Lord companions. He had K9. You know, he's had Nyssa, Tegan, and Adric. Leela. You know, he worked with the Brigadier as well in a bit of a different capacity to Jon Pertwee's Third Doctor. But he was really, really good. He had all the characteristics of all the Doctors. He had the more cynical, sinister, early Hartnell-esque Doctor. He had the goofiness of Patrick Troughton's second Doctor with the jelly babies and all that he would say on a daily basis as well. And then he had a bit more of the action hero style, which you saw in stories like the Sontaran Experiment, from the John Pertwee era, you know. So you had a bit of a mixture of all the Doctors. So you got to see that growth. And then you got the new persona of the Fourth Doctor as well, and I just think he was fantastic. He started off goofy, ended a bit more darker, more serious, but I felt like that came with the age of the Fourth Doctor because he was there for a very long time. But absolutely fantastic, and the iconic scarf, you know, is a staple of Doctor Who, and Doctor Who wouldn't be Doctor Who without Tom Baker, in my personal opinion. So I really, really like Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor. And then we've got Peter Davison. Now, for me, Peter Davison, I think he is a great Doctor. He also, like Hartnell, would probably have been more in good originally, but I've sort of changed my mind a little bit more on Peter because he's got a good arc. He is that, he's usually seen as like the nice Doctor, the Doctor because he doesn't really shout all the time or turn to violence very often. He's more like planning and, you know, softly spoken, you know, like gentlemanly, but he's a very passive aggressive Doctor. But he goes through an arc and he goes through a lot of trauma as well. He is the Doctor that loses a companion like Adric, and then he eventually makes up for it by the end in the Kaiser Androzani, which is one of the best Doctor Who stories of all time. You know, where he sacrifices himself for someone he doesn't even know. He really shows good characteristics of the Doctor. You know, he really shows that he is an old man trapped in a young man's body. And he's perfect for the role. And he does such a good job considering he had to take over from Tom Baker. So, hands down, Peter Davison is a great Doctor. You know, and he's got some fantastic stories. Like I said, Kaiser Androzani, Resurrection of the Daleks, The Five Doctors, Earthshock, The Visitation, just to name a few. You know, obviously he's got a couple of stinkers, every Doctor does, like Time Flight. Personal one for me is Terminus. I'm not huge on that one, you know, but he is good and does grow as a character, learning to love his companions more, you know, and changes. I think he is just great. And the theming of cricket, yeah, sure, it doesn't play a massive role in his here. He does play a cricket match in Black Orchid, and there's a couple of one-liners here and there, so it's a bit of an odd choice. But, you know, he's got that staple identity, and I think it's great. And I want to cosplay as the Fifth Doctor at some point in the future. Colin Baker. Now, Colin Baker, this is going to shock some people as well. Colin Baker's also going to go up here. Now, this is gonna like throw people. Like, Colin originally, when I very first watched him, he was down in meh. And then he stayed in good for a long time. But Colin, I should also say as well, I am judging some of these Doctors as well for the benefits of shorter periods based on Big Finish as well. And if you've listened to any Colin Baker Sixth Doctor Big Finish stories, you know that the Sixth Doctor goes through a massive arc and is terrific. Debatably could be one of the best Doctors if you include Big Finish. But going based on his TV appearances, you know, I think he gets a hard rap. He's thoroughly underrated. I've watched the Colin Baker era so many times because it's thoroughly enjoyable. Yes, he's a bit of an aggressive Doctor. Yes, you know, he's very vain. You know, he thinks too high of himself. He's got a massive ego. But I think that's almost got a bit of a charm to his era and makes him really unique to go back and rewatch. Sure, he doesn't treat his companions the best, but also because of that, you've got such a dramatic shift from the start of his era in Twin Dilemma where he strangles his companion Perry, to the end in Trial of a Time Lord with Mel, and even Perry to a degree, where you can tell there was an arc there during the Lost season that we never got during the hiatus, and he softens up and he becomes a lot more caring. He almost goes through a bit more of an extreme version of the Hartnell one, where Hartnell was very cynical and sinister and horrible, and then became the grandfatherly figure that we know and love of the Doctor. Colin goes for a bit more of a dramatic change of that, and also his costume is so unique. He's also a Doctor I'd love to cosplay. Give Colin a chance. He's got some fantastic stories too. Vengeance on Varos, The Two Doctors, Revelation of the Daleks, Attack of the Cybermen I think is pretty good as well. Terror of the Vervoids from Trial of a Time Lord is fantastic. Sure, he's got some stinkers, like Mark of the Rani ain't the greatest, and Time Lash is a bit but also just give Colin Baker a chance, and I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. The Seventh Doctor. Now, for me, he's good. I don't connect as well with the 7th Doctor as I do the 6th Doctor, which is weird for some people. He's got an interesting arc. He starts off really goofy and clownish in season 24. Then in season 25, he sort of becomes a bit more manipulative because they were trying to go with, there's some hidden secrets of the Doctor here that, you know, we might expand upon in future seasons. And then in season 26, he goes through a very dark arc. His costume even reflects that. And he manipulates his companion of Ace, who have a great relationship, by the way. Him and Ace are fantastic together. But he almost becomes, I said this a lot to my fiance at the time, he almost becomes the master, you know, because he's almost a bit uncaring and a bit too evil, even though he's got reasons to do it and he's forward planning. It seems a bit too much at times. So I struggle to connect with that, and I don't know. And his era is very, very weird and peculiar, but he's got some fantastic stories. I like Paradise Towers. I know some people aren't huge on that. Remembrance of the Daleks, of course, is great. Happiness Patrol, I've got a soft spot for. Greatest Show in the Galaxy, The Curse of Fenric. Fantastic stories. Obviously got a couple of duds, like I'm not huge on Dragonfire anymore. Silver Nemesis isn't the best. Ghostlight, I'm not a massive fan of. But he is a very, very good Doctor, just not one that I tend to go back and watch a lot, and that's the case with the Doctors lower on the list. I don't often go back and watch them as opposed to others. That's something else I should point out as well. Paul McGann's 8th Doctor, I'm putting him up here. Like I said, for Paul, I'm being a bit more generous, and I'm also taking into consideration Big Finish, because if I take Big Finish into consideration with Paul, he's debatably the best Doctor because his Doctor is fantastic. The Time War box sets are great. The Dark Eyes series is absolutely fantastic. General audio as well, like The Chimes of Midnight is a fantastic one. Terra Firma is another classic that I highly recommend listening to as well. You know, there's some great ones. And then obviously his TV appearances as well, such as the TV movie, I thought was really, really nice. You know, he's that sort of Englishman in New York, that true alien. It was a bit weird they tried to make him like half human. I don't really know what they were going for there. But he always still felt like the Doctor, despite the very Americanized version that the TV movie was. And then his appearances in Night of the Doctor for a bit of a regeneration, and his glimpse on the Edge in The Power of the Doctor I thought was really, really good. I'd love to see Paul McGann come back. He is very, very good. I love the TV movie. And like I said, Big Finish, he's outstanding. I need to listen to the Stranded series as well. I do own a couple of the box sets, but I haven't actually got round to listening to those yet. I do want to listen to those. But yeah, I highly recommend Paul McGann. Fantastic Doctor. John Hurt's The War Doctor. I think, yeah, he's good. I've not listened to a great deal of his audios. I've listened to like the first 2 War Doctor box sets, and then there was another War Doctor box. I listened to the Leela one. I can't remember which box set that was in particular. I've listened to a couple of him, and then obviously you've got Day of the Doctor, so there's not an awful lot to go on. So, you know, it's an interesting idea, you know, this incarnation of the Doctor that almost regrets who they are. You know, they're ashamed of what they are. So they took away the Doctor names so that they wouldn't be associated with that. You know, and it's interesting. He's still got Doctor characteristics, because obviously at the end of the day, he does want to save the world, save the universe, save planets and civilizations. It's just the methods he uses are not necessarily the ways that the Doctor should go about doing things. He goes about things in a bit more of an extreme way. I like his costume as a blend of Paul McGann's Time War outfit, his own outfit, and then crossing into the 9th Doctor's outfit with the leather jacket. I thought it's a nice little blend of eras there. Yeah, he's alright. He's pretty good. And John Hurt is a fantastic actor nonetheless. Christopher Eccleston is just top class for me. Eccleston is top class. I can't deny I adore every single 9th Doctor story. Even The Long Game, which is the worst Eccleston story, and definitely the dud in season 1, has its charm. But I mean, it's not great. But Eccleston steals the show. This post-traumatic, this PTSD-stricken Doctor who's just come from the Time War, who's trying to find his feet again. He's very alien. He meets up with Rose, who basically tries to teach him to be the Doctor again. You know, he gets flashbacks when he encounters the Daleks and stuff. You know, he tackles things in a much more aggressive way, almost like he's gone back to his Hartnell days due to the war. but he learns to grow, and he does by the end of the series, and I think that is fantastic. So it's great growth. He lightens up. His companions, as well as Rose, Mickey, Captain Jack, he has great relationships with them all. And it's a shame he didn't get to go to many planets. He pretty much just stayed on either Earth in the past, present, future, or a space station. I think that's due to budget reasons and stuff as well. But yeah, he didn't get to explore enough. I have listened to a couple of his Big Finish audios. I need to listen to the one in particular with where he meets River Song, because that one I've heard clips from and it really interests me. But yeah, he is fantastic, Christopher Eccleston, so I highly recommend it. Go watch season 1. It's a great starting point for Doctor Who, despite him being the Ninth Doctor and it obviously not being the first season of the official show. But highly recommend Eccleston. Absolutely fantastic, as his catchphrase would suggest. David Tennant. Yeah, me and David Tennant, we have a weird relationship. This is definitely going to annoy some people, but this is just my personal opinion. Keep that in mind before I put David Tennant on this list now. David Tennant's going down here in good. And this is 10th Doctor David Tennant mine, because my opinions on 14 Tennant are vastly different to 10 Tennant. I know, we got 2 David Tennants. He's too human for me. It became too romance-driven, bit too soap opera. He sort of lost a lot of the doctorish characteristics and focused too much on being lovey-dovey with his companions, in particular Rose Tyler, which is why Martha Jones and Donna Noble were a bit more of a breath of fresh air, especially Donna, who had no intention on falling in love with the Doctor. So that's why it was fantastic in season 4, even though season 3 is my favourite 10th Doctor season. He's got some great stories like The Waters of Mars, Blink, Utopia I like as well, Impossible Planet, Satan Pit, fantastic. School Reunion, where Sarah comes back, is great. He's got some great Doctor moments. He goes through the Time Lord Victorious arc, so you get to see the darker side of this Doctor, which I'm glad that we have to distinguish it from the lovey-dovey stuff that he does. But yeah, he's never fully connected with me, and I don't often go back to watch the David Tennant era, at least the initial one. So it's not one that really grips me per se. But that's just my personal opinion. I know that one's going to annoy some people, because I know David Tennant is, for a lot of people, their Doctor or their favourite Doctor, and that is perfectly fine, and I can see your opinions on it, and I respect that, so please just respect mine. But I just can't connect with David Tennant in the same way that other people do. Matt Smith. Now, my opinions on Matt Smith have changed. I think Matt Smith is actually a great Doctor, and he originally probably would have been good, a bit like David Tennant, but I've grown to like Matt Smith a lot more. I think he is a very, very good Doctor. He's very quirky. He does remind me of 7 and 2 in particular, but I don't know, almost like an improved version of them in some way. And he brings his own quirkiness and charm to the role. He is very alien, a vast cry from David Tennant. He does still have human elements, obviously, with everything with Amy, and obviously having the River Song arc as well. He's a Doctor filled and wrapped with mystery. His era was full of fairy tale theming as well. I really liked it. I thought it was really, really good. He is a fantastic Doctor. Again, he has the Peter Davison thing of he is an old man trapped in a young man's body, and you can definitely tell, because he's got the age, he's got the wisdom, he's got the knowledge that the Doctor has, but yet he's got that young face. So I think it is really, really interesting. I think he's great. I must admit, I do really like Matt Smith. He is a lot better than he used to be for me. Similar to Tom Baker, anyone who knows me knows that my favourite Doctor in the modern era of the show is Peter Capaldi, and so it would be no shock to anybody when I put Peter Capaldi up in the best alongside Tom Baker and Christopher Eccleston. He is, for me, Peter Capaldi, the modern era classic Doctor. In that, I mean, he is the most like the classic series Doctors in the modern era. You can see all the classic Doctors in Peter. The sinister nature. I keep saying sinister. The slightly more cruel version of Hartnell, the grandfatherly side of the Hartnell Doctor, the goofiness of Troughton, the martial arts stuff from Jon Pertwee, he even does the Jelly Babies joke from Tom Baker. You know, he's got the passive-aggressive nature from the Fifth Doctor. You know, he can be a bit vain at times, like the Sixth Doctor. Especially when people are saying that he looks old and he's saying that he looks young. You know, and he's got the manipulative streak of the Seventh Doctor. So he encompasses all the classic Doctors. And he's just brilliant. And he grows like Hartnell as well. He starts off darker, and then by the end, he's accepting of hugs. He's giving compliments. He's a lot more caring and sympathetic, and I love it. And he's got some fantastic stories like World Enough and Time and the Doctor Falls. Flatline is fantastic. Face the Raven, Heaven Sent, fantastic stories. I like The Husbands of River Song. You know, Oxygen. There's some bangers in the Peter Capaldi era. Obviously, there's some duds as well. Bill Nardole and the 12th Doctor is also my favourite TARDIS team of the modern show. I think it's great. Then we've got the 13th Doctor. Now, okay, unfortunately 13 for me does have to go down in meh. Okay, but, this is a massive but, 13 has, you know, grown on me a little bit. I don't hate 13 anywhere near as much as I used to. So despite her being so low on this list, let me tell you now, 13 is not terrible. 13 has a lot more charm, and I really, really loved seeing her come back in Ncuti's final story for that cameo in the Reality War. I think her being written by RTD in that was fantastic, and it's great to see that she can be written really well, and she can deliver lines perfectly. She's never felt more like the Doctor than in those moments. I was glad she got the timey-wimey line. She for me in that moment felt like the Doctor. In The Power of the Doctor as well, which is a fantastic story, her finale story, is when she truly came into her own. You know, she, unfortunately though at the start, did feel a bit too separate from everyone else. They were pushing messages out a lot more than they normally did, even though Doctor Who's always been political and always had these sort of messages. They weren't being really subtle with it anymore, and I think that was the core problem. And writing is what let Jodie down, not necessarily her acting, because she's a fantastic actor and did a fantastic job as a Doctor, had those Doctor qualities, they just weren't really allowed to shine very often, which is the problem. So even though she's in Mare, she's not horrendous. She's definitely grown on me. I like Eve of the Daleks, the Flux in a couple of stories like Village of the Angels and War of the Sontarans. You know, there's some good stories here. And her first story, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, isn't too bad either. So I have a soft spot for Jodie. She's not terrible. I would love to see her come back. You know, I think it would be great to see her come back again at some point. But yeah, who knows what the future holds for the 13th Doctor. I should start listening to some of her Big Finish as well. Jo Martin's Fugitive Doctor. The thing is, I'm going to have to put her also down in Meh too, simply because of the fact that, I think, I'm going to have to put her down here, only because of the fact that, she doesn't really do an awful lot. And I haven't actually seen any of her Big Finish, so I can only go based on her TV appearances. And she is good in her TV appearances, but there's not really an awful lot to go on with her, if I'm perfectly honest, and that's such a shame. Upon reflection, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to put Jodie up here. I'm actually going to put Jodie up in good. I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to upgrade Jodie to good. Again, that might annoy some people, but I'm going to upgrade her to good. Well done, Jodie. But anyway, Jo Martin's Fugitive Doctor. There just isn't enough to go on with Jo Martin's Fugitive Doctor, if I'm perfectly honest. Which is really unfortunate, to be perfectly honest. I need to listen to some Big Finish. You know, it's an interesting concept, you know, the Secret Doctor, but because we're not sure if this is going to be ever explored again or done justice or properly, it's kind of like, well, you know, was there any point? And I'm not even sure if there was a point, to be honest. But hey-ho. David Tennant's 14th Doctor is going to go up here into great. Like I said, my opinion on David Tennant as 14 is different to my opinion on David Tennant as 10. I actually prefer 14 to 10. His whole attitude, the wiser version that he's got now. That he's been 11, 12 and 13. He's suffering with all the consequences from those three eras as well. You know, he's struggling with his identity. He's a lot more stricter. He's not as romantically interested as 10 was. You know, he has grown and changed. And he also accepts going at the end. You know, his final words of Allons-y, they do sort of spoil it a little bit when him and Ncuti talk in the TARDIS at the end. He does revert almost back to 10 tendencies. But I think overall, he's really, really good. And it's good to see that vulnerable side of the Doctor as well. And while Blue Yonder is my favourite of the three specials, I think he does really, really good in that to show those vulnerabilities and also his strengths as well. And then he's good in all of the stories, to be honest, but I think that's where he's the strongest. But yeah, I quite like 14, and I think 14 is great. Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor, for me, unfortunately, is going down in meh. Because of the fact that he left so abruptly, so suddenly, and he never really got a true moment to shine. Like Jodie, his writing wasn't the best. You know, his era was full of controversy, full of plot holes, full of, you know, destroying legacy characters for the sake of it. You know, he wasn't given really good material to work with. Doesn't mean he didn't have some decent stories, like Devil's Cord. Boom was pretty good. In season 2, I liked The Well and Lux. I thought they were pretty good. But then he got some absolute stinkers. Like, both his finales were horrendous. The Reality War and Empire of Death were both atrocious and destroyed Sutekh, Omega, Rani, you know, destroyed all that. And it was just a jumbled mess. He was way too emotional, considering this was meant to be a Doctor that is now supposed to be over the emotional strain of 14, because he even says to 14 that I'm better because you will be better, that sort of thing. And it's like, well, clearly you're not. Clearly you're still going through stuff here, which I know there is stuff he's supposed to go to, but he seemed really unstable, and he had some promise of a dark moment in Interstellar Song Contest, but it didn't seem justified. And also, as it's the only time we see him do that because he's gone now, it almost now seems a bit random, as it doesn't like lead into anything down the line. And there's lots of loose ends, and and he ends really poorly with one of his core companions, Ruby Sunday. So I'm sorry. He's not terrible, but I just... Ncuti's era is not one that I'm going to jump back to rewatching, so that's why he's so low on this list as well. But that is going to be my updated 500 subscriber special for ranking all the mainline Doctors in Doctor Who. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please like it by giving it a thumbs up and comment down below your thoughts and what your favourite Doctors, and subscribe if you're new. But thanks again, guys, for 500 subscribers. It really means the world to me that you're supporting this channel and helping me to grow. But this is going to be the Nerdy Grail signing off for now. I hope you've had an amazing day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.